just spilled coffee on my lap. So, Pahowdy Is Basic. That's probably the title of this video, because it walks a line between clickbait and actually what the subject of the video is. That's kind of where I like to live. I would like to spend a few minutes talking to you about NFL statistical database. It could change your life. No, I can't do the infomercial thing. Either 90% of the feedback I get whenever someone asks me about statistics, or I get into an argument on Twitter about statistics, I'm like, check the pinned tweet, bruh. And that's got, my database, CFB database, going all the way back to 2000 of every NFL prospect that's been drafted or undrafted that turned out to be of some use in the NFL. Actually, it's everyone that just turns up on statistical sites, so some of them didn't turn out to be of use, to be fair. So it's got every player publicly I can get a hold of, and I had some friends check the source tab that helped me cram all that into one place so we can search it, and I've made some models and done all that fancy stuff. But 90% of the feedback I get on it, honestly, when I really think back, is honestly, it was just a little overwhelming, and so I went and paid the statistical website some money for something less, but got graphics. Spent a lot of time thinking about that today, and it caused me to choose a not sleep tonight and actually grind out a new database. And that's what I'm introducing you today. I know, another spreadsheet. Jesus, that doesn't make it simpler, Pete. I think this one will. Bear with me. So 90% of the feedback I get is just too overwhelming, and it got me thinking a lot of how I am wherever the hell I am in this little community of ours. Very small part of a very small, big community, and a very small part of Twitter. Because I'm just a fantasy football player, football fan who enjoys the community, wants to get involved. It's just a whole bunch of us small little accounts who like to argue and have fun and play fantasy football. And I'm not gonna be, I'm gonna try to be, and I think I do hold my own, statistical genius, or the coder who can get you any information. I'm not any of those things. I'm just a small part of this little community that really likes, hopefully, giving back and doesn't mind spending a few sleepless nights finding the data so we can go look. So I'm wherever I am, like, because of small little accounts just like me. Like, that's the majority of people I find that I end up speaking to all the time, that I enjoy spending all my time with. And that really kicked off for me today, because I came across a number of, like, huge accounts, and I was like, I had no idea who they are. They work for big websites, and no shade whatsoever. I didn't come in through that. I didn't, I follow all the big names just like you do, because I came in listening to ESPN and Matthew Berry and the CBS podcast and all of those guys, and I follow them and I really enjoy the hell out of them, but I didn't come in through those accounts. I came in just as a person playing fantasy football, talking about fantasy football. So I didn't, uncover the stat gurus on RotoViz or RotoBaller or Roto F456. Like, I run across them as I'm fortunate enough to keep playing in this community. That's it. It's mostly just me talking with friends, making more friends. That's been all of it. And why am I talking about any of that? It's because I really got to thinking about it while making this. I should have addressed it a long time. I've had the thought a million times. Like, even for me, most of the little apps and tabs I create in those databases is so I can quickly look something up instead of having to deal with the whole mess of data I got in there. And the reason I didn't, I think, is, and this isn't a bad or a good thing, it's just, and not something I'm going to stop doing at all, but I'm trying to keep up, catch up, and learn from much smarter people who are much better at most of this stuff than me. I just am dogged, and I don't mind not sleeping. And I hate to keep mentioning that, but I'm really tired right now, so it's on my mind. And the fact is that trying to catch up and keep up with people who can create such amazing things sometimes and often has led me to looking forward instead of realizing what's actually helpful, what's actually useful about any of this stuff. And it's not really my models or my opinions for sure. Hopefully it's just I put in the time to grind it together. And if it's too overwhelming to deal with, then what use is it? Apart from, like, 95% of the time, I think 98% of us don't need most of it. and don't even look at most of it. And there's probably about 10% of us who really complete lame asses, sorry guys and girls, that were willing to sort and work on a sheet to get to the part that we want. The rest of us are just looking, like 90% of the data lookups or the statistics we're interested in should be like 100 times more easy. And the more I worked on this, the more I realized I should have addressed it earlier. So I guess that's what I'm talking about, just an apology. Because if you've tried and just are not getting anything out of them, like the whole idea was I wanted to help, and in trying to keep up and catch up and learn to get better, instead it's just getting larger and more complicated. So that was too long. Should I redo it? Nah, one take Pete, that's what they call me. Let me show you what I made. I'll tell you where it is. And let me know if there's something missing out of it, if there's still too much in it, or what else can do. As always, this is always an ongoing project, and I don't mind continue to work on it. But this video is just, this is the thing I made. Hopefully it's of use and of some help. If it's still not, you can always just at me, at Pahowdy, anytime on a screenshot, or answer as clearly as I can whatever questions you have, as always. But hopefully this will help get you information that you might be interested in, to answer questions that you have at any given moment, without it being so overwhelming, without having to learn, which I'll continue to encourage to do, to be clear, but you shouldn't have to learn it in order to use any of the resources I got out there. So let's look. I forgot I didn't have a transition there. Every one of my databases at this point, or sheets, has this landing page, so you can see the other places. So if you're interested in, and if you get access to this one, you can go see my ranks. You can go see the actual NFL database, which has got all the stats. Overwhelming. At this point, it's overwhelming, but it's also got a team tab. It's got a vacated opportunity tab, because I'm trying to track it as well, even if I don't believe it exists. And the CFB database, which is pinned to my Twitter timeline and my Patreon timeline, and will continue to remain just there for everyone, but it is the one that most people go to and they get overwhelmed by. And this database, this sheet, whatever it is, has an NFL tab and a college tab, and that's it. And it's simplified, so hopefully it will negate some of that overwhelmingness. But and the extra stats are all in both of those too, and you got links directly to them from it. And basic database, that's this one. You can see my 2021 projections if you care to. All right, so the first tab is the NFL database. I have the IDs in there, and again, already it might sound not basic at all. Series of letters and numbers that certain websites use to track players, so Mike Davis's and Mike Davis's, but different positions, don't have the same statistics, is all it is. And if you don't care about IDs, you don't have to use them. But if you wanted to combine the NFL and the college data, you could, using those. And again, I've got videos on them. I'm happy to answer any questions on how you might do that. But again, that's a second step, and this is the first step, just looking up basic stats. So what I have it ranked by right now is ADP. I am tracking Dynasty ADP and Redraft ADP at this point using FF Calculator. And if you have any questions about where any of the stats come from, I did include this in here as well. All of my things will have this source tab, which tells you where I get absolutely everything from, and you should definitely check them all out. And also I'm listing some of my articles down here, because I have a hard time keeping track of them sometimes, and where I heard about certain statistics that I'm using for the first time. So hopefully some of that's useful at some point, but not necessary. So I just have an ADP in there, so you can, and that's current ADP up to June right now, and I try to update that every month for every player. Now obviously it's current ADP, so players that aren't drafted anymore won't have it. This has all my NFL it's got the same number of players. It's not like I limited the number of years you can look up statistics. I just limited the number of statistics, because you'll be surprised how big something expands. And once you want to see, not just position rank, points per game rank, and points per game rank without touchdowns, and so on and so on and so forth. And what about a different scoring system? And it continues to expand. So I narrowed it down to basically what I think are the most useful, or the The quick stats we're often looking to just look up, like how many receiving yards did this player have? How many players had that number of receiving yards in their rookie season, for example? So player name, their position, their draft year, just in case you want to look up a particular draft class, you can just sort quickly by that. Their draft pick, not their draft round and their draft selection and everything else, just their straight up draft pick in that year's NFL draft. And then we have season statistics with a slightly different coloration, this basic information about the players in gray, and then the seasonal statistics are in black, so it's visually kind of easy to keep track of, is my idea. And so this will tell you exactly what season you're looking at. So this first line is Christian McCaffrey last year's statistics. You can see their position rank, and that's just one positional rank based on PPR scoring because it's the most common. It's not that standard scoring isn't relevant or you might not be interested in it, but that's in the NFL database, which you could always go and look at. Or I could include it if everyone's like, no, I want to see all the positional rankings. Their age that season, what career year it is. So again, if you just wanted to look up, players in their second year, their third year, whatever, you could sort by career year. The number of games they played last year, obviously Christian McCaffrey only played in 3, and the number of touches, so the total rushing attempts, targets, and passing attempts all rolled into one number. Then you see that laid out in terms of total volume, so their total passing attempts, rushing attempts, and targets that season. And moving on, I have their percentages in there, because again, I think these are fairly often looked up. What's the percentage of rushing attempts for their team, their target share, their air yard share. I think we look at those and they have a place in a basic database. And then their yards per carry, yards per target, and yards per reception. All of those are bad stats. I don't like any of them, but I think they're most commonly referenced and easy to understand and easy to sort by, easy comparison stats to use. So it makes sense to put them in there, right? Yards per team pass attempt, because I continue to insist that I'm going to convert you to a stat that matters instead of those other 3, but it's one column, so I allow myself one extra column, okay? Then you can see their total yardage, so their passing yards, their receiving yards, their rushing yards. That's it. Their passing touchdowns, their receiving touchdowns, and their rushing touchdowns. Not another column, summing them all together, because you can see them all. You don't necessarily need that, and again, unless you all tell me you want a column that sums them all up, and then I'll do it. And then at the end here, just their PPR points, their total PPR points, their half-point PPR points, and their standard points. Now, if you wanted per game, you can calculate that using these numbers. You can just divide whatever scoring system you want by the games that are listed. You don't have to be a statistical grinder to figure out how to do that. And if you wanted points per game, if everyone wants points per game, I could put it in here. But again, I was trying to keep it as few columns as possible, so it's a very simple history to look over. In the same way, you might be interested in a player's ADOT. Slightly less rare stat, or less common stat to look up, but you might be interested in it. Little known fact, ADOT is air yards divided by targets. Their total air yards divided by their targets. Their average air yards per target, or ADOT. That's literally what it means. I know, it kind of blows my mind whenever I think about what words mean too, but that's all it is. So you can literally find it out using the stats in this, but I didn't add another column. If there's anything else in here that you might want, but don't know the formula for, but you may have the statistics for, even in this basic database, I included my formulas and results tab. Again, it's in the other database, pinned to my timeline for free, that everyone's been looking at, being overwhelmed and leaving. But in here, I have some of my testing results, which you don't have to care about at all, how predictive a stat is to projecting a player into the NFL. That's it. But I also have the source, as in where I get it from, or if I calculate it myself, the actual name, the position that I'm testing it against. But again, that doesn't necessarily matter. The sample I'm using, but also this formula column. So if you want to know how to calculate, or how I calculate yards per team attempt, it's in there. If you want to know how to calculate dominator rating or burst score or any of the things that are in any of my databases, there should be a calculation here telling you how to calculate it in this formula tab. You can also see a glossary, so if any of the abbreviations don't make sense, you can just look it up and see in simple words what that stat means. Because, YTMA doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. I get it. But you can look it up. Most of them, like I even have games defined in here. That might have been getting a little granular, but I thought just in case, I'd just list everything I could think of. Also, I know it's a basic database, but I included rookie hit rates from different draft rounds. Because again, that's one of the most common questions I get. What's the hit rate, say into the top 24, of a running back drafted in the first round? Well, since 2003, between 2003 and before 2017, it's around 88%. And I do that to give players a number of years to play in the NFL before I say if they're hits or misses. That's why the date range. But again, if you wanted to look at a larger history or calculate it yourself, your other databases are there. And those are actually tabs where you can manipulate the columns that are in yellow. But in this one, it's just a straight up list of hit rates by draft round. So basic. So that's the NFL database in the basic model. I'm hoping it helps. Let me know if I can add, subtract, or however it is. But I think that will be less overwhelming for people just interested in what a player did, or how well a player's career is going, or how well a player's career compares to past players, and so on and so forth. The next tab, it's a college database. Same thing, tried to keep it as simple as possible. I included the IDs, possibly so you can hook them up if you ever wanted to. Now, this has all the college players at skill position players that I have. So, lots of players in here weren't relevant, will never be relevant, but you could also look up the entire team. Say you want to see who AJ Brown played with in his final season. You can just look up that team's final season, and you don't just see the players that went to the NFL. You see all the players I have from my data collection in that season, because you can search by that season's year, and you can also search by that school, or if you want to see all the players in that conference, right? Right up front, I included the draft information, so you can search for individual draft classes. I've got it sorted by draft class right now, so the 2022 guys who are in the NFL are at the top. If you want to see 2021 picks, they're all down here, and you can see their draft round and their draft pick and everything else that might be relevant. All right. What else? What statistics are in here? Obviously, the games played in any particular career year, the number of touches in that season, their age in that season, their class, freshman, senior, sophomore, their school they played for, the conference, the position, just in case you wanted to sort by position. Then I've got their rankings and PPR scoring for that team at that position and for that in that conference at that position. Then their straight up PPR points, their points per game, because that might be slightly more relevant when looking at college players, and their breakout ages, because I get asked about those a lot as well, and so I imported them from, again, the very free, very public database, but again, in a smaller format that I think might be more relevant. Then I've got their passing stats, their receiving stats, and their rushing stats. Those are the next three sections. Obviously, I've got completion percentage in there for passing, and then I included their percentage stats, so the market share of receiving yards and market share of receiving touchdowns, also their dominator score, because I think that's a fairly common and often looked up stat for that individual season. Then the rushing stats, their percentages as well. That's it. At the end, I do have three what I think of as slightly more advanced statistics that might not be as commonly looked up. Weighted yards per team attempt, that's really a running back stat, but if you want my explanation of any of them, I have videos on pretty much everything and articles, or you could look at the formula tab, or you could just ask me, obviously, anytime. But weighted yards per team attempt is mostly something I use for running backs. It gives extra points for the receiving yards, because receiving roles for running backs are particularly interesting when projecting them into the NFL. Yards per team pass attempt, which I find the best all-purpose stat for receiving, when trying to look for good players in college before they go to the NFL. Yards per team attempt, because again, it's a similar stat to yards per team pass attempt in this column, the one I use for receiving stats, but I find yards per team attempt a little less predictive, but it's an interesting comparison when you're looking at wide receivers and running backs in the same conference, on the same team. So I just threw it in at the end there. Again, all the other stats are still available in the other database, but in the basic database, Pahowdy Basic, that's it. It's their rushing stats, their receiving stats, their passing stats, none of the models, none of the burst score, none even of the combine stuff, although I could include some of that if you wanted. And then just three advanced stats. And that's it. those are the two databases, NFL and CFB. Didn't even take me 3 hours to explain it. Huh? So it's got to be a lot simpler. Like the main college database, I've got 4 videos on, and each one is about 30 to 40 minutes long. So yeah, this has to be simpler, right? It's a bit more basic. It's not worse. It's just hopefully easier to navigate just for 90% of the things we're actually looking up most of the time. And that's coming from a guy who is doing this all the time. Like 90% of the time, I don't need most of the stuff in my NFL database. I probably need one of these columns. So yeah, hopefully that'll be more useful for more people. You can find the link to it in the description. It is on my Patreon, so it's behind that tiny little $1 paywall. Let me know if that's a deal breaker, I guess. But I think I like dollars. That's obviously true. I need them, but also I want it to be useful and available to everyone, and I don't think $1 is too prohibitive. You can pay 2 or 4 if you really want, if you really, really want. But at the same time, I don't... If you devalue something, people think it has no value. And I don't want it to get the anti-stigma, I guess. I guess I'm thinking about it too deep there. I posted it on Patreon. My Patrons help me out a lot. I don't think it makes it too prohibitive, especially since the college database with everything is still free, and my patrons let me get away with that. So, that's pretty nice of them when you think about it. And yeah, I shouldn't talk about that. I just suck at it. I suck at that aspect of it. I want to help as many people as possible have fun with fantasy football. I think making it less overwhelming will help. I'm sorry it's behind the mini Patreon paywall. That's where it is right now. Let me know if it's too much of a problem for you, and I'll try and fix it. That's the best I can do. Yeah, that's it. College NFL stats, simplified, hopefully non-overwhelming databases. Let me know if I need to include another column or even take some out because it's still too overwhelming. I hope it helps you out. I hope you find it interesting or useful or not. And if not, it's just one night's sleep. Who cares? Doesn't matter. I can sleep tomorrow or something. It'll be fine. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. Thanks. Thanks again. Hope you enjoyed the video. I doubt you got this far into it. I don't know I got this far into it by the way I'm stammering at this point. But let me know what you think. Comments on Twitter anytime. Really appreciate it, everyone. Thank you. Take care and have fun. Yeah, we'll leave it there. Have fun. For sure.